Good morning, all my patients. Boy, I know exercising is tough. This is not my favorite thing to do. However, I love to basically brag about how I do stuff all the time. I ski, I run, I travel, I snowboard. I'm always doing crazy things, and I do that by being 10% stronger than the demand I'm going to put on my body. So today, I'm going to work out at the skiers across the Butte. And at the gym myself, I figured I would film some good stuff for you. Remember, we just want to be 10% stronger than the demand you're putting on your body, okay? If you get some baby weights, just some baby weights, maybe like 5 pounds, I'm gonna grab what's appropriate for me. I want you to start by taking your lower back, bringing it against the ground, and as you breathe, opposite arm and leg out, and exhale up. If your back moves, you're in trouble. So keep the back down. What I'm doing here is, especially if I'm listening to music at the same time, I'm stimulating the vestibular system because I'm balancing my body here, otherwise I'd be twisting. Doesn't seem like much, but it's huge. And you're training your muscles to contract properly in coordination with your breath. Okay, so a lot of that's in my beginner exercises, but you can make them way more difficult. Yeah, difficult. So, getting on something like a Bosu ball. Keeping your pelvis well lined up while doing triceps. Remember, I'm going to exhale when I'm repping, so I breathe in. I'm going to come down slow. I tend to rep quickly. And traction's really important. Anything where you can elongate your spine. So, if you can find equipment where you can hang, I don't care if it's a tree branch or a child's playground. Right now, gravity is stretching me up. So if you take any compression, you have decompression before you start. Okay. Figure eights. Any sort of activity you do, if you do in a figure eight motion, you're going to get all muscles in a group. If you can make this more complicated by balancing, great. Those are good warm-ups. Side lunges. Side lunges with the weights out. So depending on how complicated you want to make things, great. Now, I want to go over the pelvis. The pelvis is not okay if it drops. The pelvis is not okay if it turns. And you've got 2 hamstrings, basically 4. But you got outside and inside group on the legs. And the adductors attach to the pubic joint with the abdominals. So a lot of times, most of you have seen me use medicine balls. These are pretty important because what you can do is you can squeeze the ball while doing any sort of sit-up. And that makes sure that you have your adductors and your rectus even. So when you're working out your core, you can focus on the neck, the shoulders. You don't want to be slumped. Okay? But if you keep this engaged, that's the beginning of the pelvis. The other thing is something like a side turn. So if I grab a small weight, I can get my shoulder and my hip at the same time. But let's do the shoulder later. Let's master the hip. You have to pretend a steel rod is going through here, all the way through your other hip down to the ground. I see a lot of people doing this exercise, and right now what I'm doing is I'm hurting my lower back. So we don't want to move from here up at all. So pretend this is a concrete slab, and all you're moving is your leg. Now I'm very tight, so I'm a good example of what this looks like when you're struggling. Okay, I'm going to take my knee and move. So I have very subtle movements in my back that I want to stabilize. So I'm going to back off even more. Yeah, in exercising, the number one thing you got to work on is form and knowing when to back off. More is not more. Less is more with good form, okay? So if I can get my leg to here without moving my back, that's better than forcing it and doing it with bad form. Something's wrong there. If I take this to here and I can't get good form, I need an adjustment. Okay, my hip is locked up, I'm fighting myself. Now the muscle is busy and I'm trying to demand of a busy muscle. If I'm confused, I'm gonna think that that's weak. Now many healthcare providers out there confuse a busy muscle with a weak muscle. I'm going to explain that again. Lots of people have seen these, and you might be able to get your leg up without moving your hip. That's great. That is not the same as turning in, as turning out. And I'd be willing to bet that 90% of you have an overactive IT band or a lateral quad, and that this will help tremendously. Now, I'm going to show you from a different angle. When I start getting to control this with pretty decent form, then I can relax my neck and I can actually work some of my deep inner rotator cuff at the same time I'm moving my hip. And this is the same side exercise. So this is not a cross crawl. When we go opposite, you're helping your vestibular system and your balance. Very different. Some people have learned this one. That's great, but this is wrong. If your leg is turned, or if your back's turned. So, keeping yourself really straight and then keep an eye on whether your foot is going out or in, or if your hip's going up or down. I'm going to keep that straight. What I like to start with is actually the hardest exercises of them all. You get an exercise ball. Okay, so I like to start hard because then everything else is easy. Some people like to start easy and everything seems hard after that. Whatever, up to you. I'm lazy, so if everything's easier after the hardest exercise, I go straight to the hardest exercise. So this is the hardest exercise, okay? It's gonna require all muscles everywhere. That's called as closed chain as you can imagine. So I'm gonna put my shoulder on hip, I'm gonna put balance, I'm gonna put arm strength, hip strength, core strength. I mean, it's awesome, okay? So, the prone version, I got my feet in my arms, and I'm doing push-ups on a ball. Maybe not have a slippery ball like this one. It's not my favorite gym. But doing this will make you balance in all four quadrants. If you really want to work the abs, you can bring it up, do a push-up in between, and then look at my neck. You want to turn your head, go straight, turn your head, okay? So a lot of people just have their head in one direction. I'm going to tell you to do them all. Yeah, cool, huh?
I know she loves the sunrise, no longer sees it with her sleeping eyes, and